Hello, my name is Bob Warner. I'm from the Crawford School of Public Policy, and I work on the school's new journal, Asia and the Pacific Policy Studies, and also with its associated society, Asia and the Pacific Policy Society. This is a multidisciplinary, peer-reviewed open access journal that tries to generate policy debate and make contributions to policy throughout the Asia and the Pacific region. A little bit earlier today, we were really fortunate to have Jairo Acuna giving a presentation about some work that he's been doing in Vietnam over the last 5 or 6 years, examining citizens' perceptions of the governance and administration performance of provincial governments in Vietnam. Jairo, welcome to the Crawford School.
Thank you very much, Bob. It's a pleasure to be here.
And we're really pleased that you're able to come and give a presentation this afternoon and also to talk to us now. First of all, it would be interesting if you could give us some introduction to this index that you've been working on, which I understand has taken up quite a bit of your time over the last few years.
Sure. I mean, basically what we are trying to do, Bob, is to, as you mentioned in the introduction, try to understand what are Vietnamese citizens' experiences when they interact with local authorities. The index itself, it's called the Vietnam Provincial Governance and Public Administration Performance Index. Quite a long name, I know, but it basically is a pioneering tool in the country that asks ordinary citizens how are their interactions with the local authorities. Right? For example, if they have to apply for a land use rights certificate, right? How was that experience? If they have children in the school, right? You know, what are the levels of satisfaction that they have with the public primary schools? If a relative falls sick and has to go to the district public hospital, what is the experience, right? Of that healthcare system, and we are trying to collect all that information evenly across all 63 provinces in the country.
63 provinces, that's quite a big task, isn't it? Can I ask why you focus that assessment on provincial, local governments?
Yeah, well, basically what I think that we have come to the conclusion is that, you know, is at the local levels where the Vietnamese citizens have the closest interactions with the authorities. In the case of Vietnam, even though it's a one-party centralized political system, there is you know, an unofficial informal decentralization and provision of public services happening. As you know, Vietnam is a very long country, right? More than 3,000 kilometers from the north to the south, and you know, all these 63 provinces, you know, provide, you know, a wide range of different quality of services from the public sector. And Vietnam has 90 million citizens spread across 63 provinces. The average size of the province in Vietnam is around 2 million citizens, right? So a small unit. So we are, you know, what we are trying to do is, you know, to feed back that information back to the center to understand, you know, what are the issues of performance and, you know, on which provinces need to improve, but also identify good practices, right? And then hopefully translate those good practices from one province to another one.
Okay. Now, as I understand it, the index measures performance across 6 key dimensions. Do you want to tell us a bit about those dimensions and why you thought they were important?
Yeah. The 6 dimensions that we measure are dimensions that relate to the Vietnamese own rules and regulations, right? So it's an index that is endogenous to the governance aspects of the country, and they are not based on predetermined conceptions of what is good governance or what is public administration, even though the names of those dimensions are very much standard, right? Participation. Dimension number 1. Dimension number 2 is about transparency. And number 3, vertical accountability. 4, control of corruption, both in the public service but also in the public administrative areas. 5th, public administrative procedures. And dimension number 6 is about public service delivery. So in total is 6 dimensions. Each dimension has 3 or 4 sub-dimensions. each subdimension has 3 or 4 different indicators. So at the end of the day, PAP itself is an aggregation of 6 dimensions, 22 subdimensions, 92 different indicators. So it gives you a wide array of of different aspects of service delivery.
Okay, and what kind of results? You've been running the survey now for 5 years?
We have been done this since 2009,
Okay.
where we started as a small pilot, right? Initially, there was a lot of questions, in terms of how an exercise like this, can be implemented in the country. So we tried to follow the very Vietnamese way of piloting things in small scale,
Yeah.
right? And then scale up and replicate, innovate to other provinces. So we started in 2009 with 3 provinces to test the methodology, to test the questions, right? And the issues, that could be asked. Based on the results, there was a decision made that we were going to expand it, but not to all 63 provinces, but to half of the country, 30. So in 2010, we replicated, we improved the methodology. From 2011 onwards, has been done systematically across all 63 provinces on a yearly basis. So it's an annual monitoring tool. In terms of the results, what the information is telling us is identifying with some level of precision, first of all, which provinces are doing better in each one of these subdimensions, not only the dimension aspects, but also by exploring the data itself, trying to determine what makes a Vietnamese citizen to say, yes, I'm satisfied with a particular service or with a particular procedure, and then use that information to go back to the provincial government and design strategies for them, to improve that performance.
So it's not just a scorecard, you actually are interrogating the dimensions or the drivers of satisfaction. So you're actually able to go back to provincial authorities or other people who are interested and say, this is what the people are telling us are the reasons why they are or are not satisfied.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the visible objective of the exercise is the scorecard, right? To say this province is doing better than these other provinces, but also, when you have 63 provinces with so diverse characteristics in terms of wealth, in terms of population, in terms of levels of urbanization, right? It doesn't make much sense, to compare, province number 1 with province number 23 or province number 64, right? But try to understand, what are the dynamics, right, in those provinces. One of the things that we seems to be noticing from that exercise of extrapolating that data, Bob, is that that we can challenge conventional wisdom in the country about service delivery from the public sector. And let me just give you a very quick example, right? The traditional wisdom will tell that the quality of the service will vary according to the province where you are performing that service, right? So if you are in this province, you are bound to have a better service than this other province, right? And we wanted to understand that hypothesis, and we looked at the data, and what we found is that 73% of the variation of the experiences by the ordinary citizens is by the individual characteristics of the respondent, not necessarily the location, right? So things like, for example, men experience better governance than women. Keen citizens, which is the majority of ethnicity, experience substantial better services than ethnic minority groups. The professional, the wealthy, also tend to have more positive experiences, right? So that says a lot in terms of providing clues to the authorities that there's not a fatalistic right vision that according to this province you are doomed to have a poor quality of services, right? Try to understand those dynamics and tweak the policy implementation aspects.
So geography is not necessarily destiny.
I don't think so, right? And also, yeah, I mean, and not necessarily rich provinces do better, right?
Okay,
And one thing that also Papi is pioneering in Vietnam is the mapping aspects of governance. As I mentioned in the lecture, Bob, one traditionally sees maps of Vietnam of poverty levels, vulnerability to climate change, but not about governance, right? And thanks to to this scorecard type of exercise, we can map which provinces are doing better than others, and what we can find very quickly, right, is that is the poorer provinces that are outperforming the richer provinces, right, in terms of overall governance satisfaction. It might be very well, because of levels of expectations that citizens have, right, in richer, more educated provinces. But it's also challenging the modernization theory type of approach, right? That you will have good governance or good service delivery once you have reached certain thresholds of wealth, right?
Do you have any tentative explanations of why you've overthrown the conventional wisdom? Are there any reasons why you do get that disparity?
Well, I think that what has happened is that conventional wisdom was never really tested empirically, right? And it was all based on traditional low-income type of policy-making processes, right? And now Vietnam has made this transition to middle-income country, and with that, more data and more evidence, is being put into the table of discussion on policies. So I think that's why all these traditional wisdom were seen as fait accompli, so to speak, right? Everybody assumed them, but they were never really empirically proved or disaggregated, analyzed, right? And I also think, Bob, that we are at the infancy, right? We are only started, this exercise, even though something that I should have mentioned earlier, right, is the largest governance survey that we have in the country. Over these past 5 years, we have interviewed nearly 50,000 Vietnamese citizens, right? Every year since we started nationwide implementation, we collect almost 14,000 responses. So we have a wealth of data that that needs to be explored, needs to be analyzed, with that lens of the transition from low income policy making, lack of evidence, development stage, to a middle income or low middle income, in which evidence-based policy making, is becoming more important. And why is that, right? In middle income, Vietnamese citizens are more educated, are healthier, right? Are wealthier than a generation ago. They're also looking for a different type of provision of public services, right? And Papi helps in that regard, to put that information open for discussion.
Okay, so it's one thing to have a tool that monitors and provides a measure of performance, but the real test of anything like that is how it's used, its actual impact on how things might change. Can you tell us a little bit about how Papi interacts with the way in which the government and other people try and change things?
Yeah. Well, I think that for that we have three levels of analysis on how the information is used. And to our surprise, we have had a very good open reception, to this type of data, especially when you iterate, right, the exercise on an annual basis. The first level is at the national level, right? How did the authorities in Hanoi, using the information? The government inspectorate that is in charge of the administrative oversight functions, they have to report every year to the National Assembly. They use our data to report on the issue of corruption, for example. The Ministry of Home Affairs right, also has been using, our methodology to design their own public administration reform index monitoring system. We have had extensive discussions with the Ministry of Justice on their administrative procedure control agency that tries to understand, all these issues so this is the first level, right, at the central level, and then we see that there is some, and significant use for policymakers. Second level is at the provincial level, right? At the end of the day, this is a provincial exercise, right? And we want provinces to start using that. Initially, the first year, not much use, so to speak. I think that there was some sort of resistance from the authorities, and also lack of awareness, of knowledge, right? But over the year, we have more and more provinces looking at the data, analyzing informally first. But the last count that we did 2 weeks ago is that approximately 13 provinces have officially issued some sort of response to the results for their province. Either an action plan, a decision, or an instruction from the Provincial People's Committee or from the Provincial People's Councils saying, we have looked at the data, we have analyzed the results, here are the weaknesses coming from this data, and here are the steps that we are going to do to improve the performance. And that's the second level. And the third level, Bob, is the academic community, the research community, right? This data is made publicly available for free, right? And we think that this is a gold mine for research. Media has been reporting using that information to write stories about governance and public administration. Academics from within Vietnam, but also from outside of Vietnam, have looked at the data and have published peer review articles using this information, right? So we think that we have managed to over time to increase the use and the impact of this type of information.
Okay. Now, at the outset, when you were describing the project, you made reference to the fact that Vietnam is a single-party state, and I think many people would be surprised that a single-party state would not only allow but embrace a process which is all about people offering criticisms of how the state and the party are doing. Can you tell us a little bit why you think you've been successful in avoiding that trap?
Well, yes, of course, Vietnam is a one-party state, but that doesn't mean that they are not interested in providing good services, right? And making sure that the large majority of the population, has, higher levels of satisfaction with service delivery, right? And from that angle, I think that that's why the system has been receptive to this exercise. But also the partners that we have, I think that are important. We have partnered, yes, it's true, with a very small NGO, called SECORES, the Center for Community Support and Development Studies, but in some sort of consortium format with the largest mass socio-political organization in the country, the Vietnam Fatherland Front, that has a representation from the Politburo, Central Committee, provincial level, district, commune, village in the country, right? And it's through this partnership with the Fatherland Front that this exercise has been able to be implemented, across the country. And yes, I think that there is a genuine interest, right, to make sure that as Vietnam progresses economically, right, the benefits of that growth are also distributed equally in other aspects of governance and public administration.
So, Jairo, you said that people can access the information. Can you tell us where they go to get the data from these 5 years of studies?
Yeah, that's correct. We have created a website, which is the most traditional and easiest, way to do that. The address is www.papi.vn.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming and talking to us today, and particularly for giving us this interview this afternoon.
My pleasure.